Well, look who's back. It's your favorite band of misfit toys. This is Woodworking is Bullshit. I'm your host, Paul Jasper, scientist by day, woodworker by night, and I'm joined by who are arguably the two best co-hosts in all of podcast history.
Ooh,
Eric Curtis, fine furniture maker and content creator, and Mary Sy, UX designer
you said
by
my
day.
name right this time?
I was watching
Even a
your
blind
face
squirrel
as I
finds
said
a nut every now and again, you know?
I was watching your face as I said it. UX designer by day, contemporary furniture maker by night. All right. So, as you know, we typically start with a question. But before the question today, I want to let you know that we have a special guest and a close friend of ours on the show today, Kristin Siegfried Ballenger, a violin maker, also known as a luthier, if you're sophisticated, who not only makes violins, but also restores and teaches. And Kristin has graciously agreed to contribute to this episode on...
Imposter syndrome.
Imposter syndrome. Kristin is a graduate and teacher at the Chicago School of Violin Making. She's now in her 12th year of being a professional. Correct, Kristin? And she works at Runing & Son Violin in Brookline, where she does restoration and also makes instruments from scratch at her home in the Boston area. She's good friends with us. I happen to know Kristin just from Instagram originally, and then we had overlap of a random friend of ours, Thomas, and Eric. You've done projects with Kristin as well, right?
Yeah, Kristin and I, for those of you who have been following my work for a while, Kristin is the person who commissioned me to make the Ponchette cabinet, which is still arguably, I think by many people, maybe the best piece I've ever made.
That's my favorite piece of yours.
Mine too.
It's like...
Definitely mine.
Well, well, Kristin is the person who commissioned me to do that, and she is the person who made the Ponchette inside that cabinet, which was a masterwork in and of itself. And it was a delight to work with you at that point. Which, by the way, I don't want to go too far down this road, but Kristin, like when you talk about phenomenal clients and great people to work with, Kristin was like, literally whatever you want to make. And I sent her a bunch of ideas and she was like, they're all great. And then I did none of them and handed her this weird, like ovular box. And she was like, it's great. It's phenomenal.
Make a box. That's
Make
all
a
I
box.
wanted. Make it fit.
Well, you also, in fairness, you asked me to make a travel case. And then I was like, I think I made a display. And you were like, that's good enough.
Beautiful. That's what I need.
Well, Kristin,
Only
we
got
want to thank you.
a few weird looks carrying that on the plane.
I also think I could be going insane, but I think I got my violin from Runing & Sons when I was a kid, because that sounds so familiar. It's like the and Sons part, and I know they're based in Boston. I don't know if there's another and Sons violin maker in Boston, but
I don't think there is.
that is crazy because I know that it came from Boston, and I was like a child, so I didn't remember any of it. But that
Hold
is
on, is
Been
this
around
wild.
for a minute.
Is
So
this
wouldn't
your
surprise
super
me.
fancy violin that you got from them?
Yeah.
Like the one
Yeah,
you
my
still have
full
that you're
size.
like, this is the most precious thing that I own in the world?
Yeah.
That's hardcore.
That is wild.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, that name rings a bell.
I'm going to have to go look it up now.
Yeah.
Oh, they have records?
There's always records.
It's
Go
spelled
find some
Sai,
photos, some
just so
glamour
you know.
shots. Of
Yeah, it's pronounced Sai.
Well,
Okay.
my violin teacher ordered it for me at the time. So Di Pasquale, if you are able to.
Now we're just flexing violin shit.
Yes,
on this.
already. Mary's flexing already. I knew she was going to flex, but I
She's
didn't
like
know
that
this-
one
Oh my
time I
God,
played at
people.
the Kimmel Center, MBD.
One time? How dare you?
Oh,
the multiple music schools I got in and didn't go to.
Actually, no. I only did Kimmel Center once. The other,
we're not
the
even
Academy
5
music
minutes
was
into
different.
this episode, and we're just
That's
music
fine.
nerding right now.
Listen, we haven't
Okay,
even started in on the viola jokes here.
Oh, man.
Oh, I'm so down. I'm so down.
Oh, God. Okay, I'm going to stop this. Okay. All right. So, Kristin, Thank you so much for being on this episode and contributing to what we think is an important and especially personally vulnerable topic, I would call it, which is imposter syndrome. The question is, do you have it?
Yes.
And if you,
Yes, that's the answer.
and if you do, well, what are some signs of it? What do you do with it? So we're going to like analyze this question from soup to nuts. We'll define it because Mary's our co-host, and then we'll go into like analyzing it, looking for signs of it, and then we'll talk about some moments that we all have. We'll share, where we've had imposter syndrome or felt it, and then we'll talk about ways to solve it. So, Kristin, I just want to say I have the utmost respect for you coming on as a guest to talk about this topic, because this requires self-confidence to talk about something like imposter syndrome.
That's
right?
ironic.
And to be real with us about it. So, thank you very much.
Of course.
Yeah, we wanted someone who was like an expert in their field too, like at the top of the game, to like show that it still happens to people who are like absolute top of their entire creative field.
Well, if you want an expert, you're gonna have to.
I knew
find
you were going to
somebody
make that joke,
So-
and I almost cut it off right from the jump, and I'm not going to let you do that all episode. Kristin,
and I-
before,
yeah.
if you don't know Kristin's work, pause this podcast right now. Go Google Kristin, whatever Paul said. Ballenger, Siegfried Ballenger.
Siegfried Ballenger.
Siegfried
Eric.
Violins
Roy
on
Ballenger.
Instagram. The Tigers plus violin. Go
Yeah,
Google
there we go.
her, because she really is a phenomenal luthier. She is an exceptional woodworker. And I know you can't like listen to a violin over the internet, or like feel how a violin, shut up. You know what I'm saying. You can't feel how a violin plays over the internet. And I don't know exactly how to play a violin well, but they are beautiful things to behold, if nothing else. And I trust her expertise in that they play very nicely.
I make violins. Just what I do.
So, Eric, on that point about calling her an expert, I said I considered her an expert, and she pushed back, and I said, "Is this your imposter syndrome coming out already?"
It
Oh,
is
yes.
a symptom.
100%.
Because if you're not an expert by now, well, I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah.
All right, so why don't we start by defining imposter syndrome? Mary, are you ready for your definition?
I'm so ready.
The persistent inability to believe that someone's success is deserved or has been achieved as a result of one's own efforts or skills. Let me read it again. A persistent inability to believe that someone's success is deserved or has been achieved as a result of one's own efforts or skills. And do we want to take a guess at the prevalence? What percent of the population has reported having imposter syndrome or having familiarity with it in moments?
In moments,
Like,
I would say
I mean,
quite high.
Mary, not everyone has it like 24/7. You know what I mean? Like, so what's the prevalence of what do you think the prevalence is?
I would say like 60,
Mary, Eric?
70%.
If I had to take a guess, I would guess whatever the population of narcissists is and remove that from the overall population. That's probably the amount of people who have experienced imposter syndrome at some point in their life.
I love it, Eric. Very great answer. Kristin, would you like to guess? Because
I would say solid 80%.
It's 80%. It's like 82%.
Wow.
Yeah. Somewhere between 50 and 80%, depending on like the group. So, Eric said everyone except for narcissists probably has a story about it. So we all four of us, and we haven't discussed this prior, all four of us are coming today with a moment where we felt imposter syndrome as a way to just kick off the vulnerability train. So who wants to go first?
Awkward silence.
I'll
I'm
go
refusing to go first.
I'll go first. Sure, no
Okay.
problem. So this is about 3-4 years ago. I had been making boxes for a number of years. I'd been woodworking about, 15, 16 years. And I was asked to teach a class at Pratt in Seattle. And so I said, sure, I'll teach a class. And they call you as a master teacher, and you give this lecture. And that was all fine. But I did have a moment when I got to the class, and it was a box making class where there is no box to make. There's no like pat box. I know, Eric, you do the same thing. It's basically come with an idea and we'll figure it out during the class and still have time to make the box, right? And I don't know what anyone's bringing me. I have no idea what ideas are coming. I have no idea what the state of the machinery is. I don't know if they're going to come with box ideas that I've never tried before or can't come up with a way to make. So I remember like having a moment in that class where I was like, just thinking in the back of my head, like, what if I don't know how to pull this off? Like, what if I get an idea so out that I can't come up with a way to do it? And it felt really uncomfortable in that moment because I don't know what's coming and I don't know if I'm going to be able to do it. And it felt kind of, it felt icky. Yeah, it was pretty uncomfortable.
That's fair.
And I mean, there were some problems, but we got through it all. And the boxes weren't all complete, but they were at least 70%, 80%. Some were totally complete.
That's so tricky because, like, how can you predict, like, if you can know everything in the world, essentially?
Yeah, right.
You
and
can't.
that's I felt not so much imposter, but like, what if I'm not experienced enough to pull this off for these people who paid so much money and have such high expectations of the class? It was pretty uncomfortable for a minute until we got into it, and then the nerves slowly went away. But yeah, that was a moment where I felt.
I am curious to get into the conversation later about whether experience tempers imposter syndrome, but we're not there yet.
All right, who's next?
I'm refusing to go second, so somebody else go.
I can go second. I don't know why you're refusing so much, but all right.
Because I always just talk, and I'm trying to give you the opportunity to talk more.
Okay. So I am going to talk about a moment when I was working as an architect. I think my entire architecture career was defined by imposter syndrome because I was straight out of school. So you're new in the field. You're in a very male-dominated field, very traditional, old school. And I remember this moment because it was one of the moments where I was like, I don't think architecture is for me. So I had been working on these plans for a while. We were having meetings with a plumbing engineer, or all of the engineers, but this one plumbing engineer specifically was giving me a lot of problems. I'd done so much research. I had done this plumbing scheme for him and plan for him that I knew worked, and I'd done all the details for him. I'd done it on a previous project with a different engineer, so I was positive it worked. And I remember him literally screaming at me and yelling at me in the room saying, "You don't know what you're talking about. Like, I think he said you're an idiot." And my principal was there and he defended me, obviously, because like a good principal, you should do that. But at that point, I was like, I might be, I guess, like, even though I knew that this was like, I'd done everything correctly. I knew that I'd like looked this up and done so much research, but like at that point, with all the emotion in the room, and he was like, and it was just so clear that he did not want to do it because it was like a little bit of extra work. He just went off the rails. And apparently he had done this with a lot of the women in the firm, actually. But at that point, I was just like, I guess I must be like just a terrible architect. And then I thought about it more, and my principal was like, "No, she's right." And it's like, oh man, I wish I hadn't like doubted that part of myself. So yeah,
it's really hard in a moment like that to find your bearings and find your confidence, because there's always after the fact you're like, I had the argument, like I was right, and like I could have just said X, but I didn't, because it's so like it throws you off moment when somebody gets in your face. Yeah, exactly. It's a fight or flight moment, and you're just like, I don't know how to move forward.
My reactions have definitely changed over time. Like then I was just like frozen up, and like now if that happens, like I absolutely know how I would be able to take a step back and like collect myself and rethink, and then present my argument. But when you're young and you're like right out of school, it's so hard.
I mean, that's a big part of the reason why I left the construction industry. Like coming up in the trades, like there was a million carpenters who were just like, you don't know how to do this? What the hell's wrong with you, kid? You don't know how to do this? I thought you was a carpenter. I'm like, sir, I'm 17. I'm literally here to learn from you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's unfortunate, buddy. I'm sorry.
In violin world, it's so that's how you do that.
Oh,
Weird,
that's
passive
almost
aggressive.
worse. I would rather have somebody tell me I'm a fucking idiot so I can get right back in their face. That's almost worse.
It's like in the South when they say "bless your heart" and they really mean "fuck
so
off."
that's
right?
how you
Right.
do that.
All right, Kristen.
Yeah,
Eric,
well,
who's
I
next?
guess my most recent occurrence with this was applying for my job here in Boston. This even goes back as far as 5 years ago. I remember seeing a posting for this job, and I was like, "Oh man, that's such a great place to work. That's a killer job. I would love to have that job." I wasn't planning on moving at that point. I was just, I remember that thought passing through my head. Fast forward 3 years, and all of a sudden I'm moving to Boston, and I'm on a job interview at this shop, and the owner of the shop, who has 50 years of experience, is like, "Oh, here's my head of the shop who's been here with me for 25 years, who has like 30 years of experience. Here's another colleague who is your age with 20 years of experience, started doing this in high school." It's like, oh man, I am so out of my depth with this. It's like, I am never, ever, ever going to get this job. And
You got the job.
I did get the job. And even starting out, it was a complete rethink of everything I was doing. It was, oh my goodness, I've literally been doing this work for 13, 14 years. I've been teaching this. I should know how to do this. No, they do it completely differently. You need to completely rethink everything. So that was a lot of self-doubt going into that. And I feel like I have no idea what I was doing. But we'll kind of get more into that later about, what did that turn into? But it ended up being a teachable moment for myself, because it was like, okay, let's think about this here. Do you have 20 years of experience? Do you have 50 years of experience? Let's get yourself a little break here, ma'am, and
That's good. I
think
see
about your situation here.
Yeah, I see your coping skills already coming through.
Yeah.
Right?
But,
Right,
it's...
that's for later.
Yes. More
The coping
on
skills
that
are for
later. But,
later. Yes.
it's, nearly 15 years in, and it's still popping up.
I feel like no matter how many years of experience you have, when you start work in a new environment, it's jarring to a point where you're like, I know how I do it. I don't know how you do it. And for me, my coping mechanism in those situations is setting the bar very low. It's just being like, hey, I don't know how you do it. I know how I do it. Let's have an honest conversation, because then I'm going to feel more comfortable and I can learn the way that you want me to do it. And if we don't do that, and I'm just out here pretending like I know how to do a thing that you might do every day and I haven't done in 7 years, then this is going to end up getting real tense real quick. So let's establish that line of communication.
Yeah. Also being like clear about, I don't know enough information about this. Can you tell me? Just like that being an important step. Yes. And I think a level of maturity as well.
And that is going to be my example. But before I tell you my example, I just want to say, even after however many years it's been as a woodworker and designer, there are still moments like a few weeks ago where I'm looking at this piece I need to start. And I was like, I don't know if this is a good piece. I don't know if I'm fucking good at this. Like, I don't know, like, if I can pull it off, and I don't know what it is. I don't know why it was daunting to me, but there are always those moments of like, I don't know if I can do it. And I don't know if I should do it. I don't know if I'm good enough to do it. And I think that just comes with the territory of living in the creative fields. Like it's not math. There is no right or wrong answer. It is just, when it's that subjective, it's difficult sometimes to feel concrete and stable all the time.
And funny enough, that's what Frank Gehry, the architect, said in his masterclass episode, I remember. And he was 92 in that episode or something like that. And he still think about a successful career, right?
Yeah.
And he still says, every project, there's that self-doubt. Like, well, I did it last time, but that doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to be able to do it next time.
Yeah.
And he always thought that was a healthy tension in his life. Like, it never lets you get too self-assured, too arrogant or cocky. It always keeps you thinking and always keeps you kind of curious. So I think that's probably a healthy balance.
I'm really curious to hear Mary's interpretation of Frank Gehry later on, but I will give you my example off the jump is back to the kind of being honest about what you don't know. When we got to filming the Netflix show, it was a moment of, now at this point in time, this was 2020, the beginning of 2020 when we started filming. We were only there for a couple of weeks before we got shut down. But they cast me. I'm a school teacher. I'm a shop teacher in New Jersey, right? I've made furniture, but I was not doing it full time at that moment. I had zero camera experience whatsoever, but for whatever reason, they decided to cast me as the carpenter in this show. And we get there, in the first day of filming is like an 8-10 hour day. It's all in the warehouse. And the first maybe like 15 to 20 minutes is Adair kind of addressing a group of people. This is scenes that we didn't end up using in the final cut, but Adair's dressing a group of people. And then they were like, and after that, Eric, like, it's your day. Like, there's a lot of things going on in here and it's all based around what you're doing. And I was like, okay, you remember the part where I told you I don't know what I'm doing, right? Like, I have zero experience here. All I know how is to like make less offensive dick jokes. That's all I got. I'm a one-trick pony. So Adair goes and he speaks and he does his thing, and Adair has a lot of camera experience. And so just because I respect Adair's experience in the way that he presents himself on camera, I get up there and just instinctively start mimicking Adair. Now, Adair is a gay black man, so he's got like a very distinct cadence. And we went about 30 seconds. We went for about 30 seconds, and Dave, the executive producer, calls cut, and he walks up to me. And Dave's the sweetest guy. He helped me figure out how to be on camera. He was a wonderful producer. But he walks up to me in that moment. He was like, what the fuck was that? What are you doing? I was like, I don't know. What am I doing? He was like, you're being Adair. We didn't hire you to be Adair. Figure out how to be yourself. Like, just be a teacher. And it was that like allowance of, hey, we've had this conversation. I know you don't know how to do this, but just be the person we hired you to be. That allowed me to like calm down and settle into it. And I'm very glad that we didn't end up using that footage in the actual cut of the show, because it would have been very uncomfortable.
Okay, you canceled in the first 30 seconds.
Oh, immediately.
Oh, that's good. I like that. I like all of them. So maybe we could start the analysis portion of like breaking down imposter syndrome by some research and some questions. So I'll ask you a question first. Do you think it occurs equally in men and women?
No.
Who do you think it occurs more in?
Women.
Yes. So the literature has been mixed on this for some time. There's some controversial reports, but a recent report this year did an analysis of over 40,000 people, and they came away with the conclusion that women experience imposter syndrome more than men. So that seems to be the correct answer. And especially in minorities or women in male-dominated fields.
I'm not questioning that statistic or that information, but I do wonder if it's influenced by men not wanting to acknowledge to other people or even themselves that they're experiencing imposter syndrome.
They talk about that women express it themselves better and men internalize the stress of imposter syndrome more. They did talk about that. Okay. So, I mean, that's definitely at play, Eric. It's totally. Now, an interesting, someone brought up a cycle associated with it, like an imposter syndrome cycle. So I read this review by Hucker et al. From last year. The cycle is the following. You're faced with step one, you're faced with a task. Step two, you can go one of two ways. There's two types of imposters. There's the over preparation imposter,
we don't know anybody like that.
The over preparation imposter, Mary, who is, they say, they just do so much preparation. And in fact, it's that preparation that makes them feel like an imposter. They say, I feel like a fraud because I had to prepare so much. And that if someone was really good at this, they wouldn't have to prepare like this. That by default makes me an imposter, right?
Stop
Now,
staring at me.
I know this is an audio podcast, so I was trying to call you out without calling you out, buddy. All right.
So there's the over preparation. Then there's the other way, the procrastinator imposter, where it's like, I feel like a fraud because I couldn't bring myself to do it for all this time. Maybe the barrier of over preparation was too much. So you put it off and then you just do the bare minimum as fast as you can at the end. And you say, I feel like a fraud because I didn't really prepare enough and I'm going to be outed. Someone's going to find out that I crammed and I'm just like trying to pick up as many pieces as I can at the end. And then what happens after that, whether you're the over preparer or the procrastinator, what follows that in the cycle is the fourth stage, which is you internalize any failures and you explain away the successes. So anything that doesn't go right, you're like, oh yeah, bring it on. And it's almost like a positive feedback loop of accepting the failure. And then anything that went right, you're like, well, it didn't go right because of me. It went right because I just got lucky. That person happened to be in the audience, or, it just worked out that time because so-and-so happened to be there. So you explain away your success. And round we go into the imposter syndrome cycle.
Do either of you identify with that?
Can you be
already
both?
know the answer.
Can you do both? I think so, Kristin. I think sometimes you do one and sometimes you can do the other depending on how much time you have.
To choose your own adventure.
Yeah. And, Kristin actually said something interesting. She said, we were talking about this show beforehand a couple of nights ago. And one of the things she said is, I think imposter syndrome co-presents with perfectionism. And I made a note of that. Because I think she was right. And funny enough, the review I was reading said imposter syndrome co-presents with 5 other things. The first one, perfectionism, Kristin, you were right. The need to be the best, practically unattainable self-imposed standards, right? It also presents with what they call super heroism, like a tendency to over prepare tasks and to appear. You're over preparing for a task that you could already do. You don't need that kind of preparation. You got this. So it's like that super heroism, like you're overdoing something you know how to do. The third thing it co-presents with is fear of failure. Imposter syndrome. Those people experience anxiety, the feel of being shamed or humiliated if you fail. And if you do fail, guess what? You're going to be outed. Everyone's going to know you're a fraud, right? So fear of failure comes with it. Also, denial of competence and capabilities, right? So that's what I was, if something goes well, you explain it away. It's closely tied to perfectionism. They discount their intelligence, they discount their experience, their skills, and their natural talents. And there's a propensity to internalize the failure, but explain away the success. And the last thing it co-presents with is a fear of success, meaning like it's hard to hear positive things. And if you do get positive feedback, it's kind of in one ear, out the other. It doesn't really lodge in there and give you a better sense of self. And whereas failures do register, and that's all. You could hear 10 pieces of feedback. 9 of them are good and 1 of them's bad. And all you're going to hear is the bad one. So there's a lot of co-presenting with imposter syndrome. Like I said, perfectionism, super heroism, fear of failure, denial of your own competence, and fear of success. Those are the 5 things they said it co-presents with.
Fear of success is a really interesting one to me, because I hear what you're saying about not being able to take in positive feedback, but I also wonder if this is just me like thinking about myself in moments where I have that kind of what I would call imposter syndrome, but I don't know if it hits the definition. But in those moments of thinking like, if this person thinks highly of me in this regard, can I reproduce it? Like if I'm a fraud,
yes.
right? Like I
Right.
don't know, and it succeeds, and then throwing away your own successes, right? You're like, I don't know how I did it. It just happened. Whatever,
Yep.
the stars aligned and it happened. So if this person is like, now I expect X of you, you're like, I don't know how to get back to X.
So, Eric, it's so funny you said that because the last sentence I didn't read about fear of success, I was trying to save time. The last sentence of that was, as succeeding may actually lead to a higher expectation or increased pre-existing workload than next time.
Well, the reason I thought of that was, when I was a younger man and a terrible student, I was a terrible student for a number of reasons. One of which is, I think I have some form of ADHD and in maybe dyslexia. I don't know, but in either case, reading and keeping up with the reading in school was very difficult for me. I'm a slow reader. And so if I came into class with the excuse of, I just didn't do the reading, then I immediately set the bar lower. So it was easier to clear. Like I had an excuse for not being as good as I was expected to be, or I should have been.
Yeah. So Eric, you said something just now, which is like, I don't know if this is the right definition of imposter syndrome, which brings up our next question. How does one realize if they're experiencing imposter syndrome? How do you know? What's it feel like?
Say just discomfort. Like this genuine feeling of I am in a situation where I should feel comfortable, and it's you feel out of your element, but it is a genuine feeling of discomfort, and I don't know what to do with this.
Is it panic?
Mm-hmm.
Or is your heart racing?
It is a little bit of panic. I think it can be different depending on the situation, but yeah, that's what it is, at least for me.
I think there's also a time element too for me, where I'm experiencing imposter syndrome, and then time passes, and I realized, looking back on it, that was I don't know, foolish, but like different state of mind that I was in. That I like, once everything is passed, you're like, oh, I shouldn't have, freaked out about that. I shouldn't have been great about that. That may have been that might be a more obvious sign to me of like, oh, maybe I was experiencing imposter syndrome then.
Paul, can you read your original definition of imposter syndrome? Because there was something in there that struck me, and I can't recall what it is at the moment.
Sure. The persistent inability to believe that someone's success is deserved or has been achieved as a result of one's own efforts or skills.
So that's what it was. That definition is acknowledging that you have experience and skill built over time, presumably. And I think a lot of us label experience, for example, in my own story about feeling imposter syndrome, I'm unsure if that's imposter syndrome because it was about inexperience. Like I didn't have the experience of being on television. So of course I was uncomfortable trying to figure out how to be on television. Right. versus like a few weeks ago where I've been making furniture as a professional for 12, 13 years. And I was like, I don't know if I'm any good. Like, I don't know if I can make a box interesting.
That sounds more like imposter syndrome to me. The second one.
Right. And that ebbs and flows, that comes in waves. But I guess I wanted to point out that difference because there are times where like we try something new and we feel like imposters because we haven't done it or we don't have a lot of experience versus, hey, I've been the president of the Violin Society and I still feel like I don't know what the fuck I'm doing.
Well, Eric, it's typically manifested in the most highly achieving individuals. I saw a graph that stratified like the amount of achievement that like a group of students had, and the higher their achievement went and the better they were at everything, the more imposter syndrome they had.
That doesn't surprise me too much because when you are such a high achiever, you surround yourself and you look up to people that also set a higher bar for you because you're ambitious, you have a goal for yourself. So I could see that happening. I mean, I know that happens to me. I have 7 years of design school under my belt, and I'm in a very senior position at my company. Like, all of that, I have so many years of experience, and still I experience imposter syndrome when I encounter like, oh, is this good? Like, I don't know. Like, I think I might be terrible at this. And then you have to take a step back and be like, no, I like, in my brain, I can kind of like check off the facts of like, I know that this is good. I know that this is bad. I know like what, I can think of it a little bit more technically now. So yeah, I think I relate to that for sure.
Well, it sounds like you know how to parse it, and so I'm curious. Before you figured out how to solve it, like when you've had imposter syndrome, and if it gets to be kind of a runaway train, what sort of bad things emanate from there? Like, is there negative self-talk? Kristin, do you have Mary? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, there's a number of reactions. Negative self-talk is definitely one of them. I'm a fraud. They're going to find out that I have no idea what I'm doing. There's physiological reactions as well. You can be nervous, you can be shaking. You know, you can pick your favorite defense mechanism, humor, goofing off, all sorts of things. Eric, you mentioned fight or flight earlier. You can get really defensive.
Sure.
You don't know, you feel like you don't know what you're talking about, and then so you stick to what you know, and you say, okay, well, this is what I know, it must be right. And then you kind of back yourself into a corner because it's what you know, and you don't have the clarity to step back and say, okay, wait a second, there may be other ways to do this. And so rather than reframing, you are closing yourself in. So it is, there's various responses, and I think everyone's is a little bit different.
Yeah, let's go through real quick. What have your responses been? How did you, so Kristin, why don't you go first? When you had imposter syndrome, whether it was interviewing for that job or whatever, what came out of you? What happened in the moment?
It was, why am I even here? Like, yes, I know these people, but seriously, why am I here?
Wow.
Like, they kind of know me, so I guess that's why they let me in the door. But genuinely, like, confusion is, why am I here? Yes, they'll let me look at some nice violins because they're nice people, but do I really deserve this job? So I mean, those were the thoughts running through my head.
So for you, it wasn't like fight or flight. It wasn't I'm going to argue and hold my point. It was more like negative self-talk going on in the back of your head at the same time.
Yeah.
Okay. Mary?
So I think for me, this is more of like a later, more experienced version of myself, where I'm able to kind of not let that feeling of imposter syndrome flood me. Like, I think there's a lot of value in saying I don't know, and I've gotten really comfortable with that. When I started this new job in the video editing world, I didn't know that much about video editing, and there's so much jargon. There's so much complexity in this world, like way more than I can even describe or imagine. I was like, there's no way that I can know any of this stuff. So like, one, surround yourself with people that you feel comfortable asking questions. And two, I was just okay being like, I'm sorry, I don't know. Could you explain this to me? I know what I'm good at. So let's blend those two like pieces of information together.
Well, so that's the more experienced you. How did the younger you who got flooded with panic respond to it?
Oh, I stutter. I stutter really? When I get nervous. Really? I still do. Yeah, I still do. When I get nervous, I'm like Michael Scott. I start a sentence and I don't know where it's going.
That's how I live my life, buddy.
Yeah, so it's more of this idea of like, okay, I have to say something. Like, I have to prove that I like know something at least. So like, just putting any kind of words or information out in the world, I used to think was, and I still do sometimes when I get really nervous. That was my first instinct.
Every time I listen to this podcast back to see if we did a good job, that is my takeaway from myself, is I'm just saying words for the fucking sake of saying words, and I need to figure out how to make it shorter.
We all do.
Well, Eric, while you're saying words, why don't you tell us how you dealt with your imposter syndrome? Or like what happened? Not how you dealt with it. How did it manifest in you?
As a younger person, it was like full on flight. Like it was just, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know why I'm here. I'm going to get out. I'm going to make some jokes. Like I'll make jokes and ease the tension, right?
Humor.
Definitely see that.
Humor. And,
Humor.
And as soon as like I put you at ease and you're not looking, I'm out the back. I'm Irish goodbying. Like I'm gone.
Wow.
And also coming back to that, like using the excuse of like, well, I didn't do the reading. Like, of course, I don't know what the answer is. As an adult, because I mean, look, the whole conversation we're having is that it still happens. And when it does happen, anytime I'm in a situation where I'm nervous and I can feel my heart rate rising. And here's a very distinct physiological thing that happens is, your heart rate rises. And so you start to breathe more quickly, but I forget to breathe more quickly because I'm trying to look cool on the outside. So what I end up doing is yawning a lot.
What?
I know. It's very like if I'm backstage before an event, I yawn a lot because it's like my body needs more oxygen and I'm
That's
just trying to pretend
crazy.
like I don't need to breathe faster.
That's amazing. So you want to get the fuck out of there. You're making jokes and cracking jokes and yawning a lot.
Simultaneously. But the way that I have found to cope with it now in a more healthy way, I think, is I remind myself that it doesn't matter. Like whatever it is I'm doing in that moment, even if I fail spectacularly, it's not going to derail my life. Like it's not going to end my career. It is going to be a thing that I'm embarrassed. And there's plenty of things. Like we could spend a whole hour of this podcast talking about things that I've done in the public eye that I'm still mortified about. And Paul and Mary know several of those things. But
yeah, Mary, we do.
The blackmail is real. In those moments, I remind myself that it doesn't matter. I have overcome difficult things in my life, and ultimately, like I have friends, I have family who loves me. I am in an okay position in life, thankfully, and whatever I can actually fuck up that badly, I will be able to overcome.
Mm-hmm.
But it is a thing. Like I literally just tell myself, none of this matters. That's what I say to myself over and over.
I like that. Well, that's our next topic is coping strategies. For me, in the moment, I'm an internalizer. I've learned about myself. I internalize my stress. I don't even know I have it as much sometimes, but suddenly I have a stomach ache. And it's a very particular stomach ache. It has a unique feel to it. It's like in a certain region across the top, radiating left to right. And I start having some heart palpitations that follow the next day, like a lot of heart palpitations. And at first I thought I'm like going to have a heart attack because I don't feel stressed in my head. I don't. If you say, hey, how you feeling? I'm like, oh, great day. Everything's cool. But my body's betraying me. It's telling me the true story. I like heart palpitations, stomach ache. I'm burping all the time. So Eric's cracking jokes and yawning and I'm burping. My heart's beating out of my chest.
We are a strange trio.
Yeah. So for me, that's how it manifests physically. So Eric, you started, I think, where we want to go next, which is, and I want to ask Kristin first. So what's the solution? Like, what are some solutions to dealing with this?
Is this when we're starting the therapy session?
I think so.
Oh, buddy, we've been in it for 44
We're already
minutes.
in here.
That was just the warm up.
Well, I'll start by saying, I guess you have to figure out, just as you're on the couch in the therapist's office, they say, tell me about your family. I think we have to start with like, how did we get here? Like what causes imposter syndrome? And from a research point of view, oh boy, everyone buckle up. Many things, and I'm quoting, many things can lead to imposter syndrome. So it's difficult to pinpoint exact causes. However, research on it has linked family environment to the phenomenon. Specifically, families that have highly emphasized achievement. Sometimes people who grow up in this kind of environment internalize the message that their value as a person is based solely on their achievements. and consequently develop a sense of contingent self-worth.
Kristin, what was your GPA?
Let me tell you about both of my doctor parents and how I went to trade school.
Well, I am curious though, because I've wondered, and I guess Paul, what you just said kind of backs that up a little bit. Like the exceptional students, the straight A students, have, coming back to our super well organized conversation about competition a couple of weeks ago. Like there is a metric there that says you are achieving and you are exceptional, right? You can get that A. And in my experience, and I was not one of these people, but the people who get straight A's, if they get a B, it's a fucking F. Like it might as well just be an F. There's no reason to get a B. But as soon as you get out into adulthood and the workforce, and there is no real metric, there's no grade there. There is just what you did kind of worked, but it kind of didn't, and here's where you can improve. Then that anxiety starts to raise, because how do you know that you're succeeding? You don't. You're just floating out into the ether of like, well, I guess the violin sold, but like, was he really that happy with it? Does it play that well? Does it play as well as another one? Did it look as good as a different one? It didn't win the #1 award at the show.
It didn't win
so
gold.
How do I know if it's any good? How do I know if I'm any good?
Listen, you're talking about my trip 2 years ago. Hey.
Well, I would ask Mary and Chrissy, you were, for those who can't see the video, they were both making faces during talking about growing up in environments where achievement was well, very intense.
And
is that
notice they didn't answer the question about the GPA, but that's fine.
Mary,
what was the question?
What was your GPA?
What do you think it was?
I know it was a 4.0. That's why I asked, to prove my point.
Yeah. Fine. I grew up in an Asian household where I had a brother who was 6 years older than me.
Wait, you're Asian?
Compared to. Yes, I relate a lot to it. I am 100% positive it relates to all of my imposter syndrome. And it was like ground into me that grades were important, that statistical achievements were important. Actually, funnily enough, I was talking to my parents about this recently, and they're like, "Oh yeah, that stuff doesn't matter anymore." I was like, "You say that now after all of the stuff?" Oh my god. Like, of course they like chilled out in their older age, and they realized like, I don't work with anyone who went to an Ivy League school. Like, this is we can all achieve the same sort of stuff, and it's just so frustrating to hear now. But it's fine. So yes, I can relate to this a lot. I think that it is absolutely the fuel for my imposter syndrome. It is also probably why I feel a little bit better and am able to tackle my imposter syndrome now, as I've gotten farther away from all of that, which is excellent.
All right, so let's talk about how we handle it. So Kristin, why don't you go first? What are some strategies you have to handle imposter syndrome, or to make it better in the moment or even long term?
I think first off is just realizing that it's happening to you. You know, we talked about the different responses that happen, but having that awareness of saying, okay, this is what's actually happening. Mary, you said you go, 20, 30 minutes later, a couple days later, you're like, okay, let's talk about this. This is what was actually going on in that moment. But having the self-awareness to say, this is what was going on in my head, this is what was going on in the situation, like identifying that feeling of imposter syndrome, and then going from there and saying, okay, let's then analyze the situation. What are my actual skills? I'm thinking, okay, setting up a violin, coming to this new job, it was a complete rework of everything that I had been doing, like brand new sets of numbers and parameters that is done differently here in Boston, that was done in Chicago, that I had been learned and been doing for 10 years at that point. And it's like, okay, you learned it differently. This is just different. This is not, you don't know what you're doing. This is a new way of doing things. It's not, you don't know what you're doing. So, but that is a reframe. So that's kind of my third step is, realize it's happening, analyze what's going on, and then reframe. Okay, what can we do with this? Can we just get mad and say, okay, well, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just going to quit now. No, I'm going to say, how can I use this to my benefit? How can I use this to everyone's benefit? I think all three of you have mentioned honesty, just being honest with your coworkers, whoever you're around, and saying, I don't know. There's a lot of power in that. And being able to take that and use it for good. So reframing that in your head and being able to use, this feeling of discomfort and, and turning it around and using it for good. So to benefit you.
How about you, Eric?
How do I cope with it?
Yeah, how did you cope with it? What have you found? What strategies have helped?
Did you say hard drugs? Is that what you just said?
A lot of drugs on Eric's part.
No, I mean, again, I do try to repeat to myself that it doesn't matter. It's not going to destabilize my life. The honesty component of it is like, I have to be brutally honest, because if I feel like I am pretending to be something that I'm not, then it's very uncomfortable and it compounds the imposter syndrome. So I'll like just a brief example. A year and a half ago, when I decided to focus on YouTube, I wanted some supplemental income to like make sure that, I could pay my mortgage. So I got a part-time job at a cabinet shop. I haven't worked in a cabinet shop since 2017 at that point. Right. Mm-hmm. So that had been 7 years. It'd been a long time since I had put together and fabricated. Like maybe the first or second week, I had to install drawer slides. I'd completely forgotten how to install drawer slides. And so instead of like walking up to the shop manager, the floor manager, and just being like, hey bro, can you give, like, I haven't done this in 7 years. Can you give me a 30-second reminder? I slunked over into the corner, picked up my phone, and watched a YouTube video on how to install drawer slides. And it was one of those moments where I was like, I knew in the moment, I was like, what am I doing? Like, this is so juvenile. And then eventually he came over and he was like, what are you doing? I was like, I don't remember how to do drawer slides. Can you just give me a 30-second, bro?
That's when you say nothing. I was just checking my email.
Yeah, well, that's at that point I was just like, you caught me, man. But I think it is like, had that interaction not happened, it would have been still in unease through the rest of that project of like, it's this skill set is so rusty and I don't want to fuck this up. So you're hyper aware and it's just draining, Okay. So just having an honest conversation of like, you just give me a reminder.
So far I've heard like honesty, like asking for help, reminding yourself you are competent, you are capable, and the sun will come up tomorrow, right? It's not the end of the world. Mary, do you have any to add to
that? The one thing I wanted to mention, which was kind of talked about here, was seeking people that you're comfortable asking help from. Like when
a mentor?
A mentor, it doesn't even have to be a mentor. It's just someone who it gives off, the energy of, I understand that you're new and I am totally open to helping you and not judging you. Like that, I think that's so valuable. And that's why, like, whenever someone new or like an intern starts, like, I'm just like, ask me anything. Honestly, like, I was in the exact same position as you. This is a difficult world we're in. And this field, this like expertise field is just so complicated. So I think for me, that's the most valuable part that I've learned.
Okay. I want to come back to the idea of saying, I don't know. Yeah. As a scientist, one of the most important things you have to learn is to say, I don't know when you don't know. Otherwise you're lying or making shit up or shooting from the hip. And that there's no place for that in science. Like, we need the truth, right? So you have to be able to say, I don't know. And that's a skill. And people who are scared of not knowing everything, when they don't know, they just make shit up. And I can tell those people from a mile away now, and I don't trust them, and I kind of avoid them. So when I hear someone say, I don't know, I immediately like them, because I know they're like honest with themselves about what they do.
It's a sign of maturity.
Yeah, it is. Saying I don't know is a sign of maturity. So finally, does it get better? Does it get better with time? Does it go away with experience? Eric, I think you brought this up earlier.
Well, I wonder if it goes away with experience. But if our definition of imposter syndrome is having experience and not validating that experience, then maybe it doesn't. I don't know the answer to that. I think in my experience, having some skill set or in my case, pieces that I can point to, like, this is, I think part of the thing that drew me to furniture specifically is that there is a tangible thing that I can like touch and feel and knock on and go, I made that. So that's proof that I have some skill set. And that then allows me to re-anchor myself in those moments of kind of panic and imposter syndrome at its height. So I guess my answer to the question would be yes and no. In best case scenario, yes, it does go away with experience, because like you have a body of work that you can point to and you go, no, I know how to do this. Worst case scenario, you don't take that as valid proof that you know what you're doing.
Kristin, would you say yours got better with time? Or it still happens just as much, you just know how to cope with it? Which of those is true?
I would say that it still happens. And like there have been some very powerful moments, especially in the last couple of years. I will say that my skills for dealing with it have definitely improved, which lessens the impact of it. I am able to recognize what's going on a lot faster and deal with it faster. So the skills are still there, and they're developing and getting stronger. Just like developing a lot of mental skills and coping skills as well. It is essentially a coping skill. um I don't think it completely goes away, and I also don't think that's the worst thing. You guys had talked about in perfectionism. Okay, it can be a bad thing, but it can also be a powerful thing. I think reevaluating your skills is not a bad thing. And, saying, okay, is there another way to do this? If you are assessing it correctly and not completely going down the rabbit hole of I'm a complete failure, I shouldn't be here, I don't deserve this. If you can reassess your skills and be self-analytical without getting into the dark mental places, yeah, I think it can be a skill. It can be helpful.
Okay.
So I don't think it does completely go away. So you just get better at dealing with it.
Yeah, I found it gets better with me telling myself, well, I don't have to know everything. It's okay to not know everything. And what I have to offer is X. I can teach you how to make this, or I can teach you this. I'm offering this. I'm not offering everything. So this is how I do it. Take it or leave it. And if you think it's wrong or you don't like how I did it, that's totally okay. But this is what I have to offer. I'm not a fraud because I don't know every other way. But I'm just, we're all human. We have a limit of what we know, and I'm bringing you what I know. So take it or leave it. I've sort of come to that kind of view instead of expecting myself to know everything.
Who knows everything? That's like a crazy expectation.
Well, I mean, yeah,
that's very ironic coming from the person who expects themselves to know everything about all of the things all the time, always. If you're gonna tell me to fuck off, say it in an audio format. Don't flip the bird.
Oh man!
All right.
I I would repeat everything everyone just said. I mean, it takes time, and I definitely still experience it. Less so for sure, but also the one thing that I want to add was I'm a lot more comfortable in knowing my strengths, and I think that helps alleviate the imposter syndrome of like, this is what I'm good at. I have this whole other area I don't know, and I think that the two balance each other out, and I bring this to the table. This is what someone else can bring to the table. Let's, share knowledge.
It's sort of accepting that we all have limitations as opposed to expecting perfection of yourself. I like that. All right, kids. I think we talked. Well, we just hit an hour about imposter. It went really
good
fast.
Therapy session, guys.
Yeah, it went really fast that hour.
How much are we charging each other for this?
And there's a bunch of things Kristin and I outlined that we didn't even get to. We had skipped it all because we're already at an hour. So with that, I think we're gonna cut bait on the imposter syndrome. We hope that was helpful to you, and I hope what a lot of people tell us in social media and messages is like, I really related to so and so's view of that, or Mary said this, or Kristin was talking about that. And it seems like I get so many messages of people relating to one view or another. So I hope at least at some point in this conversation, we hit the particular nail, on the head for you, because it's pretty clear everyone's experience is different. With that, we're going to switch to a segment. Now, we always do a second segment, and usually it's like feature or fail, or what is it? Like
woodworking trivia,
myth busting, lightning round. But we decided that we're going to let Kristin take the lead and give us dangerous. It's called Violin Bullshit, and it's trivia and myth busting related to the classic instrument.
I'm so excited. I've been working on this for a couple days. Okay.
so over prepare? Okay, cool.
I did over prepare. I was trying to think of the weirdest stuff that has happened, but also related to woodworking. Okay, so violin bullshit. I'm gonna start out a little bit easy. We're gonna do woodworking related, and we're gonna go through, what are the different types of woods that are used on a violin, including the fittings?
No, you go last.
Kristin, I don't even know what fittings means. What are fittings?
All right. Do we go one at a time? Is this how this works?
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Paul.
I think usually curly maple for the back and the ribs, and spruce for the top.
One at a time.
One. Okay. Eric.
Spruce for the soundboard.
Okay. Mary.
Ebony.
Yes.
I'm out. Oh wait. No. Is it sycamore or beech for the bridge that holds the strings up?
No.
Oh, okay, wrong.
Are we sticking with classic violins specifically, or is this like
there are alternatives,
or just like wooden instruments
to backs? There are some alternatives.
There are alternatives
to
to backs. Okay.
Yes.
We're not gonna,
and also the internal parts too.
Oh, don't you nod your head knowingly, Mary. She's so smug right now.
Wait. So, hold on. So we have maple for the back.
Maple, spruce,
ebony.
And ebony is for the thing where you put your fingers.
The fingerboard.
Yes, the fingerboard.
Okay.
And for the fittings.
What are fittings?
Sometimes for the fittings. There are other options for the fittings as well.
Okay. Is rosewood on the table for those?
Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you.
There you go. Count it.
God, Paul, this is an audio medium. If you want to tell me to fuck off, say it.
Fuck off with your fucking smug rosewood shit.
I'm just trying to beat Mary right now, buddy. We're on the same team.
All right, go.
Willow wood.
Willow. Yeah.
You son of a bitch.
Mm-hmm.
Where's that?
Comes from a willow tree.
Back.
It can also be the corner blocks and linings.
Horse glue.
That's not a wood.
That's a layer.
I'm just saying things I know that violins are built with at this point. Brass rod.
What else? All right, how about the bridge?
Are there more? How many we got?
Okay.
I know of boxwood.
Boxwood.
Yeah.
Wait, Eric, did you say boxwood?
Yes.
No, he did not.
No, he said rosewood. Okay, boxwood.
What's it used for?
Okay,
What's boxwood?
boxwood can be pegs, chin rest, end pin.
Yeah, that's all I know.
Yeah.
Pine?
I think I've only got 2 more.
Okay, go ahead.
Poplar and pear.
I was gonna say poplar, but I didn't think that was
Mhm.
true.
What are
Damn
they
it.
used for? Oh,
Yeah,
poplar
backs
is
and
used for
ribs.
a back? Really?
Yep. So Italian
Interesting.
poplar is really, really beautiful.
really?
Those sons of
Yeah.
bitches.
I'll find a
Like,
picture.
it's
I'll
such
find a picture and
disgust.
tell you.
I'm like,
Send it to you.
American poplar looks like a bag of dicks. So
All right. Well,
If we don't make a t-shirt that says American poplar looks like a bag of dicks, I quit this show.
all right.
All right,
I'd
what's
like
the
to point
next
out
one?
that I got more than Eric. Just
Yes, you
but-
did get more
but-
than Eric.
If Paul and I are on the same team, which is true, then we tied.
and
How
bag
is
of
that
dicks
fair?
just won.
Bag of dicks
outright.
just won it. That's just
That just
that's
won
winning.
the whole thing outright.
Yeah.
Wait, Kristen, what's the bridge where the strings go over it? What's that
Maple.
thing made of? Oh, that's maple. Oh, okay.
Italian poplar.
All
All
right,
BOD.
else
are
you
we
got?
ready for the next one?
Yep.
It's a what is this part called?
Okay.
Bag of dicks.
What are these called?
Sound hole.
F-holes.
F-holes. F-holes or sound holes. Okay.
All
I'll give it to
right,
you.
listen. That's a 1-to-1. All right.
A-holes.
Okay. I'll get a tie there.
Damn right. That's how
Do
you
you-
politic,
should
Mary.
we
Get on my
do-
level.
Should we do trivia or another what's this?
I just
Well,
want to beat Mary.
Trivia.
trivia.
Trivia. What were strings historically made out of?
Horsehair.
Sinew.
Oh, I feel like I know this. Isn't it
Goats.
like goat something?
A bag
Or
of dicks.
sheep something? Oh my god. I feel
Goat
like I know this.
intestines.
Is it like sinew?
Gut.
What?
Yeah.
Sheep gut.
Sheep
Yeah.
gut? That's what I
Sheep
meant by
gut.
sinew.
Yeah.
I
Sheep
did.
something.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Paul got that one.
Wait, is that the definition of sinew? I use sinew.
No,
I don't
sinew
know.
is muscle.
Is it?
Yeah.
Is it muscle?
Yeah.
It's gut.
You don't
It's
describe
intestine.
somebody's gut as sinewy.
No,
Like-
Dick.
It's
It's
all
no.
stretchy,
I
and
just-
flexible. No. That's
Wait,
not
I just
muscle.
looked it up, you fucking charlatan. It's a piece of tough fibrous tissue uniting
Yeah.
muscle to bone or bone to bone, a tendon or a ligament. So I'm
You know
wrong
what
anyway.
neither
this
of those
isn't
things are? It's a
No,
gut.
no, that does not count.
I'm totally wrong, but it's not muscle, Dick.
It's a sinewy gut that man has.
Okay, all right, we got another. What's this?
Mary, I just want anybody watching the YouTube video right now should just see Mary's face, because when we talk about Mario Kart and how she gets silent when she's really trying to win, this is exactly what's happening right now.
I saw it before she just
Uh-huh.
started smiling.
Okay, go ahead. What's this?
More.
What is this?
Oh, wow.
It is an S-shaped tool with a clover on one end and a little spine on the other.
A butt plug.
I don't know what kind of butt you're plugging, but
I would
I
not
don't know.
want. I don't know.
You don't know what this is?
Nope.
Mary, did you ever go in for an adjustment?
Yes, but I never asked.
What kind of adjustment, Mary?
Okay, this is a sound post setter.
Oh,
inside a violin,
Interesting.
There's a little stick on the inside. So this reaches inside the F-holes and allows you to move it around. So
it's
one end, you
not-
stick it on there.
So it's a violin's butt plug. Like,
It-
I think I'm
Fair.
not
I mean,
that
you
far
have to
off.
look in the butthole to adjust it.
Fair.
I feel like I get a quarter of a point for that.
All right. No, you both failed that.
No deal.
Kristen got
No
the point.
deal here.
Wait, I want one more trivia. More trivia. Go.
Okay. This is a process of elimination, or one of these answers is not the item. Which one of these things has not been found inside of an instrument? Rattlesnake rattle, a tree air freshener, vomit, ashes from cremation, a used Band-Aid, or dirty limericks?
All of the above. They've all been found in an instrument.
I think all. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a trick question.
It is.
Yeah, I think
Yep,
so too.
yep.
They're so specific.
I can spot a trick question a mile away.
A rattlesnake.
I have not personally pulled a used Band-Aid out of there, but I'm sure that some little elementary school kid has just plopped that in there.
Kristin, what was your best thing you found inside a violin?
A bug, a spider, like a living spider.
Oh God.
It was so gross. You looked in the butthole and saw a spider.
Did you like
everybody's
scream and
worst
throw?
nightmare?
I was like, okay, we're gonna put that down.
Oh my God.
But yeah, rattlesnake, plenty of rattlesnake rattles.
Why?
It's a fiddle thing.
Oh,
It's a fiddle
interesting.
thing.
Yeah, it is a fiddle thing.
Like a
changes
rhythmic
the
thing?
sound?
Like it buzzes. Like normally buzzes are a bad thing, but fiddle players love them.
Interesting.
Oh, that makes
They're
sense.
weird. They're in there. But ashes from the cremation is definitely the weirdest.
That was
That's
Weird.
That was one of my teachers.
Man.
Had that happen. Hey, you've got a little dirt in here today. Oh, don't worry about that. It's just Frank.
Oh, that's
you. Just Frank.
It's just Frank.
fucking Frank, always getting where he's not supposed to be.
Oh God.
Yeah.
That's crazy. All right.
Okay.
Well, we have more, but we're out of time. It's an hour and 10 minutes. We're going to save the rest for the after show. So for those of you who would like to hear the after show, which we will discuss more trivia and probably more other dirty stuff, you can join
Definitely
us
more
on
butt plugs.
you can join us on Patreon. All right, everyone. Well, with that, we hope you enjoyed today's episode on imposter syndrome, and we will see you. Oh, wait. And thanks to Kristin for being our special guest.
I was going to say,
Yeah.
we're just going
Thanks
to
for
dip out.
having me.
Thanks, buddy.
Yeah, that was amazing, Kristin.
It's a great episode.
Yeah, you are a super high achiever. You were raised by super high achieving parents. You continue to be an expert in your field.
Mm-hmm.
And now you're helping others by talking about imposter syndrome. And God, the ice in your cup is so goddamn loud.
Fucking time she picks up that cup, man.
All right, we're going to quit so Kristin can have a drink of water in peace. All right, thanks, everyone.
Thanks,
Thank
friends.
you.
See you next
Thank you.
time. Bye.